Welcome back to the Painting Coach, and in this tutorial we're going to be painting Prince Duval of the Crimson Court. And don't forget, all the techniques I show you in this video can be used for all the other models too. If this is your first time on the channel and you want to learn how to paint your miniatures, learn lots of tips and tricks as well as see a wide range of minis, then please consider subscribing and hit that bell so you're always notified of my latest video. Here we go with the Crimson Court, and it's Prince Duval to get us started. So the first thing I'm going to do, or what I have done already, I've primed him black and then I've sprayed him with Mephiston Red spray from above. If you haven't got that, don't worry, just paint him Mephiston Red, it's fine. And the first thing I'm going to do is just going to baste the flesh, because what I want to do is I want to get that base so that if I'm painting this, so if you look down in here, the neck and things, just want to baste this so that we're not kind of basing it later and going over bits we've already finished. So paint all the flesh with some Celestra Grey, because what we're doing is we're going to go for a cold flesh against a nice warm red armour. Probably going to need a couple of coats, so work your way around, get that done, and then come back and we'll start to block in some of the black. Once we've got that down, you see I've not been particularly tidy. I can go back in and tidy any bits of red. I'm going to switch to Abaddon Black, and in terms of what we're going to do with this, we're just going to darken up all the areas that would normally have been black or should still be black if I hadn't sprayed it with that Mephiston Red. So we've got the cloak here, so just paint all of it. I'm going to do the leather in black as well, all the scabbards and handles of various bits and pieces. We've got the trousers as well. So there's quite a lot of black on, or black elements on the model, and his boots as well. So just work your way around. Again, if you're not 100% sure, check the box art. I should check that I'm actually in focus and in shot there. So there you go. Get that done, then we'll come back and we'll highlight the black next. So with that black done, you can see the model's really a bit more framed in terms of how it looks. Painted the base as well, just to give me the true look of what the values of all this colour is going to be. So what we want to do, we're going to highlight some of this black now, and the colour I'm going to use for that is Mechanicus Standard Grey. So we're going to do the things like the leather pouches, so we just want to paint around the edge where the model lets us, because it can be quite awkward with some of these, all the kind of pointy bits we've got in there. I'm not going to do the cloak, because I'm going to actually do the cloak green to give some contrast to the model as well. So just working my way, then taking my time, highlighting some of this black, all kind of the handles. Again, not using too much paint, but it's just going to help everything stand out a little bit in the final model. And then we've got the hair as well, so just going to work this down. Good point on your brush, just trying to simulate those strands of hair. So get that done, and then we'll come back, and I think we'll do the cloak bit next. So I said earlier I'm going to go for a green kind of cloak. So what I'm going to do is going to base it with Incubi Darkness. Now the reason I'm going for the green cloak is it'll contrast really nicely with the red, because green is opposite red on the colour wheel. So today's video is about colour theory a little bit, so hopefully you're not just learning about how to paint this particular miniature, but you are learning a little bit about colour theory and a little bit about warm colours, cold colours, etc., because we're really going to use those to our advantage on this model. So get all the cloak covered with this Incubi Darkness, and then when we come back we'll have a little look at highlighting and seeing if we can do some little blends on it if we need to. We might not need to, we might be okay. So get that done and then we'll come back. So we've got a nice bluey green colour there, and what I've done now is I've put some Kabalite Green on the palette, and what I've done is I've mixed that as well with some of that Incubi Darkness. So I'm going to use that mix first. It's about 50-50 and it's fairly thin, you can see the palette through it. What we're going to do with this is just going to pop this along the kind of most raised areas. So where we've got the creases, and we've got the big kind of folds. We just want to use that and feather it out towards the end, and you can see that it kind of just gives a little tint, because what we don't want to do is, if we went straight to Kabalite, it'd be really quite harsh, and it would be kind of like a traditional edge highlight, which again, we're just trying to put some volume into the cloak rather than using those edge highlights. So just work your way around until you're happy, and then we'll come back and we'll start those highlights in earnest next. So we've got a really nice effect there, and hopefully you can see how that green really is contrasting with the red. I mean, it'll all come together when we finish the model. So going back to that Kabalite green on its own now, and this is when we're looking to just create some of those kind of sharper edges. And you can see, because we've got the mix underneath, it's nowhere near as harsh, but it does give us a really nice kind of green transition, which looks really, really nice. So go around, paint all those folds with the Kabalite green. Again, if you make any mistakes, you just go over it with the previous colours we used, and then we'll come back for the final highlight. So the last highlight we're going to do is a colour called Cybrite Green. As you can see on the pass, quite a bit brighter than the others. It's quite desaturated as well. So when we work it across this, we just want to use it sparingly. So what I'm going to try and do is catch kind of the edges of the cloak, only the sharpest parts, just like that. You can see that gives you a nice kind of sharp edge. What we're going to do as well is just around the bottom, just catch those edges, and then when it comes to some of these folds, again, very little paint on the brush. Just looking to catch the kind of uppermost folds, not worrying too much about what's going on the bottom, just focusing towards the top there, just like that. That gives you a lovely greeny blue cape, which really does contrast nicely with the red. So that's that done. I think we'll come back, we'll start the silver next. In terms of silver, there's not a huge amount on the model. It's just the sword, really, and a couple of little buckles on the back. So I'm using iron hand steel just to base the silver. And the reason I'm doing the silver first is because there's a lot of the gold is actually kind of on top of the silver. So it's easier to paint the silver, get that finish, and then just be careful when you paint the gold, rather than trying to, you know, look around here on the sword, trying to get, it's easier to just push the silver in there without worrying about damaging, or not damaging, just going over any gold you've already finished. So get that done. There's a couple of buckles on the back there, and then we'll come in, we'll shade it all next. Shading the silver is really straightforward, just with some Nuln Oil. Just paint it all the way up the kind of the sword blade, work it in there as well, so you've got some shadow areas when you apply the gold. Nice and simple like that. And also you've got the buckles on the back. Just run it over, and I also painted the vial with some silver as well, because I think what we'll do the spike gold, and then we'll sort that out. One thing I did do as well, I did the design on that scabbard as well. I kind of missed that on the first part, so do that exactly the same way as you did the other silver. So what we want to do is highlight it, and the colour we're going to use is Chrome from Vallejo Model Air, and this is going to be really nice and simple. So just find the edge of the blade, just going to run the brush up it, and you get that really nice bright highlight. So essentially we're going to do this all the way around, just to kind of add some shine. And then when it comes to the buckles on the back, just going to trace over some of the edges, just catching the top raised bits, and then you're done. So work your way around, get all that silver, and we'll start the gold next. So like I said, we're going to move on to the gold next. Now it's kind of like a worn gold that we're going to be doing, so I'm going for Balthasar Gold as the base. Now in terms of what we're going to paint, there's quite a few areas, so try and be careful not to spill it onto the red, just like I did there. But if you do, don't worry, because once we've got it all sort of shaded down and worked out, we can go back with that Mephiston just to tidy it all up. We're going fairly well here. In terms of what we're going to paint, there's quite a bit, so what I would say is, if you're not sure, check on the old box art which bits to do, and if you need to use a second coat, then go ahead and do so. But essentially what we're doing is we're doing this kind of bat emblem here. We've got the parts of the armour that come down here and across the top. We've got all of that shoulder pad. We've got the hilt on the sword. Absolutely loads of bits of gold. This little bit here, this vambrace. And then we've got the design going back through here, all of that shoulder pad as well. So plenty of gold to do. Just work your way around and, like I said, take your time and enjoy it. Try not to get any of it on bits you finish or any of the red, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. You can always go in and repair it, and we'll come back, shade it, and then build up some of that battered effect. I've gone in and corrected any areas where I've spilt onto the red, just to save time later on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shade all this gold with some Nuln Oil again, working it into those recesses, and also sort of using it to black line some of the red areas, which is the reason why I went in and fixed everything, because it just makes the black lining easier, and it means we won't have to go back and repair anything later. So work your way around, get it all shaded with this Nuln Oil, and then let it dry, and we'll come back and we'll start to highlight up the battered gold. Now we've shaded that kind of Balthasar Gold down, we want to just brighten it up a little bit. So the colour we're going to use for this is Sycorax Bronze, and in some areas this is going to be really easy, so you can just catch that edge there and just pull along the edge to get a really nice bright shiny bit. In some other areas, so if we look inside, make sure we're in focus, if we look inside there, we're going to have to just be really careful with our brush and just work it down. So go around all of the gold, highlight all the edges with the Sycorax Bronze. Again, where you can, just use the shape of the model, and then we'll come back and have a look at it. We may put another highlight in, or we may be happy. So I'm pretty happy with how that Sycorax Bronze has turned out. I'm not going to add any more to it, but what I want to do, because we're going to do the red armour next, and what I want to do before we do that is I want to get this vial started. So essentially what we're doing is just painting it horizontally into the bottom there with some Mephiston Red. So leave the black line at the edge. Don't worry if you go right up to it, because we're going to shade it, but essentially it's going horizontal that way, so that line across there should be in line with the on the base. So get that done, make sure it's a full covering, and we'll come back and do the armour next. So we're going to firstly shade all this armour, and the colour we're going to use for this is Flesh Tearers Red Contrast Paint. Now I've mixed this with Contrast Medium, probably about 1 part Flesh Tearers Red to 1 part Contrast Medium, and I'm making sure I haven't got too much in my brush. And what I want to do is I want to paint the armour panel by panel. So just work your way all the way around all the armour, and this will darken it quite nicely and help us start to really bring in the kind of bright red armour effect that we want. Make sure you cover all of it, and you can see that it's not on the camera, I'm not sure it looks too dark, but essentially this is then going to form the shadow areas where we jump off of to do the highlighting. And make sure that you've not got too much on your brush. My Flesh Tear Red is particularly thick, so once I've thinned it down with that 1-to-1 with Contrast Medium, it's a lot more pliable, a lot easier to use, but just want to make sure that I'm doing panel at a time, and where I can, long strokes as well. So work your way all the way around the red armour, let that dry, and then we'll come back and should be able to start highlighting. So when that Flesh Tearers Red is dry, you can see you'll have a little bit of a sheen, a little bit of a shine, but the red is much darker. So what we want to do is we want to brighten that back up. We're going to do that through several successions of highlights. So what we're looking to do is we're looking for these edges, and this first highlight will be a little thicker. Where we can, we'll catch the shape of the model, and the reason this kind of first highlight will be a little thicker is just because we're going to be able to come back with more highlight inside it just to build this up. So just take your time where you can, like I said, catch that model. And don't forget all the techniques I'm using on this guy, we can use on all the models in the set as well. So, you know, I'm just painting this guy, but you could probably have all 4 of them on the go at once, working your way through. So I'm just going to carry on building this Mephiston Red up. Edge highlighting, if you've ever painted a Space Marine, you know what edge highlighting is. And then, like I said, it's a little bit thick in some places, but that's okay because we'll come in with a finer highlight later. And if you find that it's still too thick, you can always just take some Flesh Tearers Red with that contrast and paint over it. So get that done, and we'll come back ready for the second highlight. The next highlight we're going to use to build this red up is a little bit of Evil Sunz Scarlet, which is a brighter kind of colour. And again, we're looking to catch as many edges as we can. And we want to be painting inside the Mephiston Red. Now, if we come up against any issues, then we can always either go back to Mephiston, or we can go back to the darker Flesh Tearers Red, whichever works for you. And what we're doing, we're going to put another 2 highlights on this red to really make it pop. So just work your way around. You can see there the difference between the 2 colours. So keep going, catch those edges where you can, and then we'll come back for the next highlight. The next highlight of the red is going to be with Wild Rider Red. And you can see this is quite an orangey red now. So we really want to use sparingly if we can, just catching those raised edges, working our way still inside that last highlight of Evil Sunz Scarlet. Just, like I say, catching the sharpest edges. So I'm putting hardly any on, but it just builds up that overall red effect. So work your way around doing that. Like I said, make sure you don't have too much on your brush at once, because it's really important to not flood any of these areas. And then we'll come back and we'll have the last highlight on the red armour before we make start on the bones and gems. The last colour we're going to use on the red needs to be used very sparingly, and that's Ungor Flesh. So you can see it's a yellowy orange, almost kind of ochre colour. And what we're looking to do is, where we've got the sharpest edges, we're just looking to put a little dot. And then as this builds up across the model, you'll really start to see how the red armour starts to pop. So just on the sharpest edges that are going to catch the most light. I made a little mistake there, so I'll go back in and fix that. But just work your way around, get that done, and then we'll come back, start the bone next. So that armour's looking fairly striking now. So what we need to do is paint some of the bones. So this model, he's got the 2 coming down there and the 1 out of the elbow. So the colour we're going to use for this is Wraithbone. And we're just going to pop it on. Probably going to need 2 thin coats for this, so just take your time and be careful around those areas you've already finished. And then once you've got that done, we'll come back and we'll get going on shading it and adding some depth. Should have said as well, I totally forgot, so my apologies for that, but going through. In terms of this vial, I did it exactly the same as the armour, so I painted all the Flesh Tearers Red over it, and then I just highlighted it up in exactly the same way. So if you haven't done that yet, you can go back and do it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some Skeleton Horde just to paint over all the bone. Now you can see there that I'm actually not throwing it on really thickly. And that's because, so if I use that one as a comparison, I'm just going to spread that out across the whole of the bone, because obviously this guy is stood up, so gravity is going to do its magic and pull all that down to the bottom if we put too much by way of Skeleton Horde on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to put another coat of Skeleton Horde on. Then once that's dry, I'm going to put another coat on, probably about halfway down. So let's see if this is, I think this one's dry enough to do it. So you get that nice aged bone effect on both sides. Then what I'm going to do is, once that's totally dry, I'm going to paint another layer about halfway down on both sides, and then when that's dry I'm just going to paint a little bit on the tip, so it gets gradually darker as it goes. So get that done and we'll come back and highlight it next. So I've done my 3 layers of Skeleton Horde, and you can see that I've got a really nice transition down the length of the bone. So I want to take some Wraithbone again, just to highlight these up. So most of the time you can just follow down and follow the shape. They're a little too thick to just run the brush down and get the kind of normal edge highlight that we'd perhaps go for. So just go around, make sure you're happy with it. If you think it's a bit too bright, then you can just give it another bit of Skeleton Horde just to tie it back in. I'm just going to keep working on these now, and then we're going to finish off with the flesh. So what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to take that Celestra Grey and just go around and repair any bits of flesh that need it before we get on to finishing it. So what I want to do is I want to shade this skin. Now I want to keep that cold kind of blue look, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade this with some Space Wolves Grey contrast paint. I actually mix this with 2 parts contrast medium, 1 part Space Wolves Grey, and you can see there it just works nicely over the Celestra Grey and gives a really nice subtle kind of shade to it. So just work around all the flesh and get that done, let it dry, and then we'll come back in and we'll start to highlight it up. Once that Space Wolves Grey contrast is dry, let's go back to Celestra Grey, and we're just going to pick up the most raised areas, leaving the Space Wolves Grey in the recesses. I kind of realised once I'd started doing the face as well that I said we're going to finish up with the flesh, but that kind of meant I totally forgot about all the gems that we need to do as well. So we'll finish up with the gems and the nails and things like that last, but in the meantime let's just catch those raised areas, cover most of the flesh that we just painted with the Celestra Grey, and then we'll come back and we'll give it another highlight once we're happy. The next highlight we'll use for the flesh is Ulthuan Grey, and this really it's fairly thin anyway, but we just want to use this to really focus on those most raised areas. So we've got the brow, the cheekbone, things like the knuckles, and that'll really just brighten up all the flesh and really kind of reinforce the cold nature. Remember I said at the start we're going for cold flesh against warm armour, so this is how we do it. So just work that in until you're happy with it, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at the kind of the eyes and the fangs next, and then we'll kind of jump onto the gems to finish off. The last colour we want to use then on the flesh is White Scar, and this is really sparingly, so we're looking for catching just like the tops of knuckles, the nose, brow, paint the eyes and paint the fangs as well. I'll do them off cam because of the angle I need to be at to actually film this. It doesn't it's not very easy for me to get the brush in there, so let's see if I can catch a fang. Kinda, not really. So work your way around, get that done. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and we're just going to add some colour around the eyes and the mouth. Now the colour I'm going to use to put around the eyes and the mouth is just a little bit of Carroubourg Crimson, not too much at all. So just going to paint it into the eye sockets, that lower brow, so you kind of get a pretty mean glowing red eye there. Same with the mouth as well. Just fill the mouth area, and what I'll do then is go back and just touch up those teeth with some White Scar. I'll do the other eye, come back, do the gems, and then this chap is done. So there are quite a few gems all over the model. So what I'm going to do is just take that White Scar and just very thin amount of it, and start just painting them up with the white scar. Don't worry too much if you don't paint all of them in one go. Just let it dry and then work your way around. You know, especially if you're going over black like I am here. So we've got these little eyes in here as well, which are gems. So don't check the box off if you're not sure. We've got the ends of the dagger here, and then we've got the end of the sword as well, which are all gems. So work your way around, get a nice even coverage of that white scar on all the gems. I will come back and we'll use some contrast paints just to colour them and finish up. So I'm really happy with how this guy is turning out. So I'm going to use 2 contrast paints to do the gems. The gems on the red armour, I'm going to use Magos Purple. So all I'm going to do is just paint that over the white and then let it dry and then paint a little bit more in the bottom corner. And for all the gems on things like the sword and the scabbard, I'm going to use Aethermatic Blue contrast paint. Again, just like that, painting it on over the white. So get that done. Don't forget to base your model. I'm going to show you how to paint this as part of a short, which will be out not too long after this video. But otherwise, base him to match the other chaps in the Crimson Court, and you're done. Let's have a look at him on the turntable next. And there we have it. Prince Duval of the Crimson Court is done and he's ready for the table. I absolutely love these new vampire models and I really enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you did as well. If you did, please leave a like and a comment down below. It really does help me make sure I'm creating the kind of content that you want to see. If you would like to support me and the channel, you can do so using the links in the description. There's a link to my Patreon where you get exclusive access to me via my Discord, as well as a live monthly frequently asked questions feed and some exclusive content as well. There's also the link for Goblin Gaming where you can get up to 20% off all your wargaming needs, as well as my Amazon affiliate links where you can see some of my recommended equipment. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.